On blast.
This is Ball on Blast, part of the On Blast Podcast Network, available on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. If you like it, then subscribe and tell your friends. Holla.
On blast.
Thank you. You're far too kind for tuning in once again to a little thing we like to call the Ball on Blast Podcast. As always, my name is Sheldon Alexander. I'm joined by my guy, Andrew Webster. Webby, what is good?
Not too much, man. The Trevor Lawrence watch is on in Philadelphia right now. I just watched Joe Burrow play the Eagles to a draw on Sunday. Whatever. At least, remember when Donovan McNabb was like, "Oh, I didn't even know we could tie" a couple of years ago?
Yeah. But hey, at least your Phillies are in the playoffs, right?
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Okay.
How about the Mets? Are the Mets in the playoffs, Sheldon?
Who? I'm not familiar with that team. I'm not familiar with that team. The only thing I know is that they just got bought by the dude who the show Billions is based off of. So.
Oh, really? Bobby Axelrod?
Bobby Axelrod.
They got. Okay.
Let's go. Right. Let's go.
I didn't realize that was that guy's claim to fame.
I mean, claim to fame. Let's just say there's some creative license with how the show goes, and
yeah,
what my
exactly.
dude really did. But that's a story for another day. Today we are here because the NBA Finals are here. And there was a time not too long ago where I got to be honest, I didn't know if we would see the day that we would be here trying to crown a 2020 NBA champion. But the Miami Heat will take on the Los Angeles Lakers for the NBA Finals, also known as the Larry O.B., thanks to Kawhi. Hey, but as the famous saying goes, Webby, before you know where we're going, we got to know where we came from. And so we'll get to predictions at the end. But first, LeBron and the Lakers ended Jamal Murray and the Nuggets' run in the bubble by eliminating them in 5. No 3-1 comeback this time. But the Lakers lay it down, the smacketh down, 4-1. What was your biggest takeaway from the Western Conference Finals, Mr. Webster?
I hate to go back to the well about this, but it just reiterated to me that Giannis's MVP this year is completely illegitimate. After seeing what LeBron did in the elimination game 5, yep. I mean, we've seen some incredible, especially with his backing, or not really his back against the wall, but in elimination games. That Game 7 against Boston with the Heat comes to mind. With that Game 1. In the series that they lost
the
in the finals.
Or the Wiz, wow. The Warriors.
Warriors. So just, he has these incredible, against Detroit, obviously, back in the Cavs, back in the day. He has these incredible individual performances, and that one against the Nuggets to basically take off their head and book their spot in the finals was amazing. To see a guy that old, and it's not just that he's doing that. We've seen him do it before, but at the age that he is and with the team that he has around him, to be able to take over so dominantly and force his will, it's just it was so impressive to watch. And then the thing that really stood out to me was, I don't know if it was you who posted this picture on Instagram maybe, but it was the Heat celebrating going to the finals and LeBron just sitting on the court with his hat on.
Yes.
And just his whole aura of there's nothing to celebrate. This is just part of the process of winning another finals. Mm-hmm. And how it's just another step, there's nothing to celebrate. The job's not over. The next step is going to be the hardest one, as it always is. And so that kind of difference in those teams, we're going to get to our predictions later, but that really stood out to me, that even at this age, we talk about LeBron needing to motivate himself, whether it was him talking about Giannis's MVP or all the stories that I'm sure are going to be written over the next couple of days about he and Pat Riley's relationship over the last couple of years. But just to have that bit of extra motivation of, this isn't over, this is nothing to celebrate, that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron, 38, 16, and 10 to close out the Nuggets.
Nuts.
That's an insane line. And just the way that he did it, because, again, in the closeout games, or even going back to them going up 3-1, LeBron's ability to say at the end of the game, hey, I'm going to guard Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
Take on that assignment. And Jamal Murray and the Nuggets, let's be serious, I think they ran out of gas. Jamal Curry was Jamal Curry. Did I really call him that?
Whoa,
that's
Freudian.
Wow.
See, this is my other thing too, is that somewhere
that really just happened?
Somewhere Steph Curry, like, I want to see next year, like, the pictures of Steph Curry just jacked, you know, like
okay.
in that best shape of his life thing.
Okay.
Like, he must be at home dying right now.
Well, he's been in Toronto for the longest time now.
Really?
Yeah, he's been in Toronto just hanging.
COVID.
Wow, jeez. So many different angle ways I could go with that. I'm just going to let that one go, Webby.
But like, I mean, I know that, you know, they didn't have every team in the bubble, but man, like, I know a lot of people are going to say, you know, asterisks on this season, but man, it would have been different to see if the Warriors could have made a run or if they were healthy, because you know he's got to be kicking himself, because we're all basically forgetting about Steph Curry.
Well, that's
right
the thing
now.
about next season. Next season, you're going to get the Nets and Warriors as like two finals contenders, right? And that's before we know what happens in free agency, which we know will be crazy. But you mentioned LeBron and his like non-celebration. The one thing I'll say, and I'm going to say this multiple times, I'm not a LeBron hater. If you follow the pod, you know, I'm definitely not a LeBron hater. I'm not one of those people. But I will say LeBron knows what he's doing when he just has his flip-flops and sits down beside everybody else. Like, he knows while the confetti comes down, like, he knows that's going to be on the gram and everyone's going to be like, look at how focused he is. Like, he's very calculated and knows what he's doing. But with that said, I'm not mad at him at all. Hey, what he's done is, it's incredible, right? Since 2011, other than last year, LeBron's been in every single NBA Finals. That's insane.
Yeah, it's an incredible stat. Like, you think about,
and last year he was hurt.
Jordan. Yeah, and that was probably the only reason they didn't make it. He probably would have dragged that sorry ass Lakers team with Lonzo and Ingram to the finals as well.
I don't think so, but
maybe
I just think LeBron doesn't do anything by accident. I'll say that, right? So a great run for the Lakers, but salute to the Nuggets and what they accomplished. And you might not even remember this, Webby, but in one of our previews we did for the playoffs, when I asked you about a surprise team that could make some noise in the bubble and make it a little further than a lot of people might expect them to, you did say the Denver Nuggets. So
I know, and even I think that they were a 2 seed or a 3 seed in the conference or something. They were a high seed, but it just seemed like in the years previous they had so underperformed, and they were just waiting for a postseason that they could show everybody what you and I, who watch a ton of games, have known for a little while, that Jokic and Murray is not a duo to mess with.
Yeah.
And then adding guys like Jeremy Grant to that mix only makes them stronger. So yeah, I figured that they would make a little noise, and getting through 2 rounds was incredible. And you know, even taking a game off the Lakers in this iteration of that team is pretty impressive.
And the other part too is it is gonna catch up to you playing in Game 7s every other night. Yeah. Right. And coming back from 3-1 down in back-to-back series is just a tough hole. And to beat LeBron and the Lakers, just like to beat the Clippers and Kawhi, you need a lot of things to go in your way. And so you kind of you saw them run out of steam. Jamal Murray was hobbled in that final game, but it doesn't take away just the obvious leap that man made in terms of just getting his name out there among real NBA bandwagoners, I want to say, because the real heads knew. If you follow Canada basketball, you knew. We talked about it on this podcast a while ago, and I'll never forget this too. A long time ago, when Jay Triano came on Tim and Sid, he said this off the air, and I feel comfortable saying this now because, like, what's the big deal? But he said it off the air at the time. So this is before Jamal Murray went to Kentucky, and what he said was, he's going to be better than Wiggins. And it sounds crazy to think about that statement now, but if you go back then to that moment in time when we're thinking, oh, really? What? Like, we knew Jamal Murray was good, but his whole thing was, no. Like, in terms of baller, like a basketball skilled player, Jamal Murray is going to be that dude. And he said that then, as opposed to Wiggins, we know he's super athletic, and that's kind of where, he's physically gifted. Jamal Murray, he's in the gym shooting jumpers, working on his game. Like, he wants to smoke. And we saw that now. Yeah. So it's crazy. I always think back to that moment because I think that's such a, that's a real basketball head, obviously, in terms of Canada basketball circles. But to see where Jamal Murray's game is at now, when you're putting up multiple 40 and 50 pieces in the playoffs, you're here, you've arrived, you are a star in the NBA. So salute to Jamal Murray for sure, and salute to LeBron and the Lakers for making it back to the finals again. And great Western Conference final, even though it was 4-1. I think we were still entertained by that series a lot more than some might have thought going in. So huge shouts there. That brings us to the Eastern Conference Finals, and the Miami Heat eliminated the Boston Celtics in 6 games. And this was a strange series because a lot of the games were super close. And then if you go to that last game, it was very close until the very end.
Yeah, until it wasn't. It flipped like that.
Crazy. But what stood out to you the most about this Heat win in 6 games?
So it was that in our podcast before, I picked the Celtics because of their talent, because of their top-end talent. Yeah. That top-end talent is not yet old enough.
Yeah.
They don't have the experience. They might have a great coach, but, it didn't look like Stevens could figure out the zone. But those young guys are almost there. They're not quite there. Now, do they have a move to make in the offseason? Yeah, probably. And probably a big one.
We'll get there.
Especially with Danny Ainge helming that team. But I really think, the Heat are the best story of the NBA playoffs. That team is so – we talk about it all the time, is that Heat mentality of having the young guys and the veterans and how they get to coagulate and form a winning basketball team. Iggy was awesome down the stretch. Yeah. Jay Crowder has been great, and then you add in, obviously, Mr. $300 on backwoods, Tyler Harrow, who's been sweeping the nation, and Bam, who is literally the best player in the NBA. Well, apart from probably LeBron, but Bam's ascent here in the bubble has been incredible. And you want to talk about how mainstream media doesn't really know about Jamal Murray. This is another guy whose name is now popping up with NBA bandwagon fans, as we say. But we've known about Bam for a while. Now, Calipari said if people were saying that he was going to be this 3-4 years ago, they were smoking crack or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Probably didn't think Bam was going to be this good, but we knew that he had the athletic ability. But just to see him and this Heat team, this Heat culture, make it this far again in a conference that, again, we thought could have been totally up for grabs by a bunch of different teams. Yeah. What were they, the 4 seed, the 5 seed?
Yeah, they were the 5 seed.
They were the 5 seed, and it's like Giannis gone, Toronto gone, Boston gone, Philly didn't even show up, and it's the Heat. It's the Heat that make it. It's awesome. It's a great story, and we're gonna see if they can put up with the star power of LeBron and Anthony Davis.
Well, one of the things here that we say a lot on this pod is choose where you get your takes from wisely. And if you listen to this pod, we've been telling you all season long the Eastern Conference title was going to be up for grabs. It could have been one of 5 teams, 6 teams if you include the Sixers before their implosion. But we've been talking about this.
You would have thought it would be the team. You would have thought it would be the team with the 2-time MVP, but we know how that happened.
We talked about this all year long. We weren't surprised by, them going out in the second round. And, the Miami Heat, I hate retweeting myself, but I feel like what happens...
Might have to do it.
No. But I feel like what happens a lot is that people get sucked into the narratives. And my biggest pet peeve with 2020 is that people don't keep receipts in terms of what they say. So I always try to hold myself accountable for when I say something stupid and when I say something correct. And, hey, I was wrong on the Clippers, right? Clippers, I thought the Clippers were going to win the NBA championship, thought they were going to beat the Lakers. Cool. Wrong. But when we look at the Miami Heat, okay, I was out here saying from the start of the season, before they got Iggy and Jay Crowder, look out for the Miami Heat. Just because early on in the season, you could see, oh, they found something in Duncan Robinson. Oh, they found something in Tyler Hero. Those guys just came into their lineup, and you know the big thing that really helped them that is kind of going under the radar here is Goran Dragic has led them in scoring. Him and Jimmy are both at 20 points a night. He's been healthy. The time off allowed him to heal up and be fresh. And he's been
not only healthy, but this is a guy who was on the block. Like before the season and throughout the first half of this season, they were actively shopping Goran Dragic. And now, since the bubble, you're right. He's been the absolute glue guy, the guy that the X factor on the team.
Yeah,
to use a cliche.
Just a gamer. And the thing too is, you know, we're talking about the Heat young guys, but we're not even mentioning Kendrick Nunn because he's not playing, right? And he was on the all rookie first team, so he had a really good season. He was their starting point guard, and now he's not even getting minutes in the playoffs. He's lost his minutes to Goran Dragic. The reason I bring that up is because why Miami is here is because something we talk about on this On Blast podcast network. We normally talk about it with the Raptors, obviously, but it's organizational depth. And I think if you're the Raptors or you pay attention to the Miami Heat, it looks very familiar if you think about it, right? The young guys meshing with the old guys, and go back to last season, Kawhi and Marc Gasol and Kyle Lowry, and then now you're looking at Jimmy Butler, Dragic, Jay Crowder, Iguodala, and then you go back to the young guys, Pascal, Fred, and now you're coming to the Heat and you're seeing Bam, right? You're seeing Tyler Hero. Like, it just makes too much sense. Add in good coaching as well, and it's organizational depth.
And even higher than that, good front. I mean, it's top down. It goes all the way from ownership and front office all the way down to your 12th guy, your 13th guy off the bench. Now, my only problem, or not problem, but the only thing that you, as a Heat fan, that I would be worried about is that my team right now is only 7 players deep.
We're gonna get to that. We'll get to that. When we talk about the actual matchup, we'll get to that. But if we stay here for a second on the Eastern Conference Finals, right? So again, a couple things to bring up here in the Eastern Conference Finals. Spo outcoached Brad Stevens. And for those scoring at home, Spo outcoached Stevens, who outcoached Nurse. Just for those keeping score at home, I'm not playing the result. I'm saying that for the real heads that watched the other not being able to make adjustments. So Nurse wasn't able to make adjustments against what Brad Stevens was doing against the Raptors on defense, right? Switching the pick and rolls and all that. The Raptors had no answer the whole time. They fell into just a glorified 3-point shooting contest, right?
Yeah.
Spo throws the zone at Brad Stevens. The Celtics don't really have an answer, and they fall into, in crunch time, just jacking up threes, hoping that they go in. They don't go in, so they took L's. But just watching the adjustments that Spo was able to make because of the depth of the Heat and in terms of scoring depth, like, it was coming from every angle. And so if you think about it, they had closeout games, where Dragic, who was their leading scorer, was on the bench because they were riding with Iggy. So just watching the moves made by Spo, that's what stood out to me the most. And from that series, it was just the emphasis on the fact that Heat culture is real, right? Like, we talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
And what they've done with this team is incredible when you think about the fact that they lost LeBron James. Chris Bosh got a career-ending health issue that he had to deal with. And that money was still on the books for the Heat for a couple years. Wade, we already know he aged and retired. Cool. But they never tanked. They stayed above water, and when you break down what they did after LeBron James left, after that finals appearance, they didn't tank. They won 37 games, 48 games, 41 games, 48, 44 games, 39 games, and then this year back in the NBA Finals. That's incredible. That is culture, and I emphasize this again for Raptors fans to understand this is what we talk about with organizational depth, and the Raptors are on the same page in terms of just having that consistency where you expect success in the regular season, and now the playoffs, you're about championships. That's your culture that you're building. Winning brand of basketball, young guys, old guys, doesn't matter. We're all living by the same creed.
Yeah, the long play rather than the short play.
Totally agreed. And you mentioned a move for the Celtics. If we flip to the Celtics here for a little bit, I think that I agree with you. I think something needs to be done because there's too much redundancy in terms of,
big time.
So Tatum's not going anywhere, right? But when you look at Jaylen Brown and Gordon Hayward, and
Marcus Smart,
but I think you keep. So I think you just signed Kemba, right?
Kemba's
staying. Tatum's staying. Marcus Smart adds a level of toughness, and his contract is really good. I don't think you get rid of Marcus Smart. So I'd be looking at Hayward and Jaylen Brown, which I know it's tough, but at the same time, Hayward's contract is going to be tough to get rid of. Jaylen Brown might be the only other asset, but I think you need to change something up. You need a legit big guy. God bless Tice. He played above his head, did great, but when the chips are down, the other thing to remember too is, again, as tough as the East was this year, the Nets are coming next year.
It's only going to get tough. Yeah, it's only going to get tougher.
Is there a move to be made? Are you with me here? You think the Celtics need to do something?
Yeah, and you brought it up earlier. I think that this is the Bradley Beal landing spot.
Okay.
I think that the Celtics, I'm not sure what their picks look like. They might be out of, but I could see Jaylen Brown and a first, or Jaylen Brown and Gordon Hayward and something else to get
Bradley Beal. Ooh, that's an interesting one.
I think, keep him in the conference. I think that would be the landing spot. I think that he's going to have a lot of potential landing spots. I think that he's going to be on a lot of people's lists, but I think that if we know anything about Danny Ainge, is that these kind of big moves are what he does. And like I say, there's no bigger name probably right now that's available than Bradley Beal, other than maybe Giannis. But again, I wouldn't want to waste the capital on that.
So the other part I want to talk a little bit about here is Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens, the boy wonder of the NBA, gets a lot of pub for being one of the best coaches. And this, I think, is a weird playoff for him because, there's expectations. Like, this season was about the Celtics winning the championship. But Gordon Hayward was out, which obviously changed a lot of things for their team. But when you look at it and how it played out, you didn't really need 7 games, or you shouldn't have needed 7 games to beat the Raptors. Like, the Raptors, I think... that was guts. That was all the playoff cliches about heart of a champion and great coaching and playing above their head. And, but when you look at it talent-wise, the Celtics should have taken care of the Raptors. And you could make the argument that they're more talented than the Heat. So do we have to start looking at Brad Stevens differently than, a lot of the praise that he gets in terms of being this boy genius?
Get him back to college. He's not a real NBA coach.
But how did he not know what to do against the zone? I don't get that.
That's what I don't understand either. That's why I kind of chalk it up to the young players of the Celtics not able to kind of figure it out. But you would think that their coach would, have something diagrammed up to kind of bust up that zone. But it's tough, right? He's honestly. It seems like he overperforms when he doesn't have the horses.
Okay.
And then when he gets all the players, the big priced superstars, the guys that are real game changers, that level of coaching doesn't necessarily work anymore.
It's different.
Almost like a guy who needs young players to get at them than a guy who knows how to manage big personalities and big superstars. Yeah. So, I don't think that Brad Stevens is going anywhere in Boston. I think this is a guy that they've really invested in. Has my opinion on him changed as one of the better coaches in the NBA? No, not really. I'd rather have him over most of the other coaches in the NBA, as we've seen some really bad ones. I don't think that they're going to try and hire Doc back and get rid of him. But yeah, this is definitely this is definitely a black mark because they should have, like I was saying, they had the talent to beat Miami, and he got out-coached by Spo, which isn't an insult at all because Spo is a really good coach and has been for years. Almost underrated now at this point.
Yeah. And I think, too, the point you just made about being able to coach young guys and develop young guys, that is something that Spo's also done. But the whole instance of going through it with LeBron and D. Wade also gives him insight into how to deal with those superstars. And I think it's two different things. You can be the X's and O's guys, but being able to manage the egos of the stars is totally different. And, you mentioned Doc Rivers. Has a great reputation for being able to manage the egos of stars. Is he a good X's and O's coach? Probably not. Right? Nick Nurse proved last year he was a great X's and O's coach. But if you ask Kawhi as well, he said, I always point back to this and no one really takes it in as much as they say how great of a coach Nick Nurse was for Kawhi. Kawhi just said in his speech at the parade where he gave the laugh, people missed the part. And it's just because I'm a loser and I've watched it way too many times and picked it apart. But Kawhi says, he's like, Coach Nick, let me do what I do. Right? And then you see in the background, Lowry is sitting beside Siakam, I think, and they're just dying with laughter. And what I took from that was like, yeah, he lets you shoot whatever shot you wanted, whenever you wanted. And if we're being honest and you paid attention to the Raps, he didn't really know the plays for most of the season, right? So I bring that all up just to say, to back up your point of coaching is so different. There's so many different layers to it. Managing the egos, managing young players, developing young players. There's so much that goes into it, right? And Brad Stevens has shown he can coach young players. He can develop them. But when it gets to the next level, you need a little more maybe to get over the hump. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next couple years because you got Tatum locked in. He showed that he is that dude. He's nice. Jaylen Brown is also nice. Would you like to keep those guys together? Yeah, right? You'd like to have them grow up together, but you're in a situation, if you're Danny Ainge, you've rolled the dice already and added Gordon Hayward to a long-term contract. You've done the same with Kemba. So you're in a tough spot. You're in a very tough spot. And I'm going to be super interested to see how that plays out in the offseason. But I'll say this much, Webby. Before we get to that offseason, there's a big series left. One more big series left to go, and that, of course, is the NBA Finals, as mentioned. Again, starring your man's LeBron James, going up against his former team, the Miami Heat. This is so juicy on so many levels. Oh. Once you remember the history of LeBron, I want to say in Heat circles, if you hear them talk about it.
In Pat Riley's circle.
Pat Riley was a little bit salty about how it ended. Yeah. Felt like LeBron sort of led them astray and wasted their time knowing that he wasn't coming back. Forced them to come out and fly out to Vegas, I think it was, to have a meeting with them. And now LeBron left. Pat Riley wasn't really happy about it. And now here we are again. And then add in Pat Riley's former team, the Showtime Lakers. So this is so good. But who do you like in this series, Webby, and why? We'll start there.
Okay, well, it's been my prediction since we started this season.
Correct.
I like the Lakers to win the NBA championship. Whether it's, I would say probably 6 games, maybe 7 games.
Okay.
If this Heat magic can keep up. But to me, it's this. The Heat look so spectacular against the Celtics. And you said it earlier. Tice did as much as he could.
Yeah.
But there's only so much you can do with really only one big guy. I know that they had a couple other bigs that they threw in there, but they weren't necessarily all that NBA Eastern Conference Finals ready. You know who is? Anthony Davis, JaVale McGee, and Dwight Howard. Okay? I know the last 2 names there aren't necessarily the sexiest names, but they are 6 fouls, they are 7-footers, they are rim protectors. We saw how good Dwight looked in the first half, at least. of the last two Lakers games there against the Nuggets. I think that is a revelation for them. I think if they can especially use him as much as they can in the first half of games against the Heat, that's going to be a big thing. And the other thing about the Heat is that we've seen them maybe not have the best first halves against Boston. So if you can take advantage of that and then save LeBron for the third and fourth quarters, I think that's going to be a huge X factor.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, hiding or ducking from the fact that by far the Lakers have the two best players in this series.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Like
number 1 and 2 for sure. But then you look at the Heat have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Totally.
So it's going to be those guys like Dwight, like JaVale, like Rondo, like Pope, like our boy Kuzma. If they can get any kind of moment, any kind of momentum, any kind of sustained success, that's just going to tip the scales for the Lakers like crazy.
And here's the reason why I'm going with the Heat. And here it is, right? So there's a lot of things, right? Extremely top heavy, and I get that. But as you mentioned, who is the Lakers' third best player, right? Because every single game that they've played in these playoffs, right, when the games mattered, because if you go back to the end of the quote-unquote regular season, there was a lot of garbage time games where guys weren't playing, right? But the games that mattered, the only people that lead the Lakers in scoring is LeBron and Anthony Davis. So you let them cook. Mm-hmm. It's going to be tough to stop that at best. You can hope to slow them. But a thing we talked about last year in the NBA Finals when it was the Raptors and the Warriors, okay, was that's cool. You got two guys that can score, but you need to get to 100 points. So even if LeBron and AD both score 35 points, my math tells me that's only 70 points, right? Yep. Where are the other scoring coming from consistently from the Lakers? Because I don't know who their third best player is still to this point. And if you're going to tell me it's Dwight Howard or Rondo, and that's who you're relying on consistently night in, night out in the NBA Finals every other night, I don't know if I'm buying that. But I'll say this.
But I would counter with this, though. I don't think the Lakers need a third best player.
They haven't yet. They haven't yet.
I think the Lakers need when LeBron took those Cavs teams without Kyrie to the finals, who is their third best player? J.R. Smith?
Yeah, but
it's like
that's like what 3 years ago now?
What these LeBron James teams need is a huge number two, which he has in Davis, and then he needs the role guys to play their role to the best of their ability.
For sure.
They need Rondo to do Rondo things. They need Pope to hit an occasional three. They need Caruso to play defense. They need the bigs to protect the rim and grab rebounds. I don't think that they need necessarily a third dog to win this series.
So
as weird as that sounds.
The only reason why I go the other way is just because when you break down the Miami Heat scoring. So again, the third best player, I would rather have, so whoever the third best player is, I'd still rather have Bam, Jimmy, Tyler Hero, Dragic, Duncan Robinson, Crowder, or even Iggy. Like Iggy would start on the Lakers. Danny Green.
I would say that Duncan Robinson has not played that great in the last couple of games.
And I would still rather have him on my team than Danny Green, who's getting mega minutes on the Lakers.
And it's ungood.
It is not good at all. And again, I'd advise people, if you don't follow Cuffs the Legend on Twitter, you definitely should. His Danny Green slander, even as a Lakers fan, is top notch. But going back to the Heat, and here's a balanced attack that they've gotten in the playoffs, right? You got Dragic at 20.9. You got Jimmy Butler at 20.7. Then you got Bam at 18.5. Hero at 16.5. Crowder at 12. Duncan Robinson at 10. That level of balanced scoring, and we've seen the last series where Jimmy Butler didn't lead them in scoring once in that whole entire series. So again, another thing, how you can tell the people who are talking about ball but don't really know what they're talking about is going to be Jimmy. Yes, Jimmy is a leader, but in basketball terms, that means more than just scoring the basketball, right? Real heads like us, we know that. We talk about that all the time. So the fact that the Heat can get a 30-piece from like three different dudes, that is going to be more difficult for Vogel to try to focus in on, and how do we stop what they're doing game plan wise. If I'm Spo, we know Spo and Riley right now are sitting around coming up with the game plan of how do we just think of the Belichick way, right? How do we take something away from you?
Take what you do best and turn it into your weakness.
Something. So my thing is, I'm going to make 37-year-old or 36-year-old LeBron James, I'm going to make him work really hard. Yeah. I'm not going to allow him to walk the ball up the floor. I'm going to say, Crowder, hey, you might not score your 12 points a night. You might only score 8, maybe 6, but you're going to pick up LeBron full court the whole game. Yeah. And it might not tire him out.
Live in his jersey.
Yeah, you're not going to tire him out in game 1, but by the time we get to game 5 playing every other night, he's going to be tired. Also, you're limiting LeBron's ability to get the open shots for the other guys. All those other dudes, the other part of this Heat team is minus Duncan Robinson. Jimmy can get his own shot. Dragic can get his own shot. Bam can get his own shot, right? The Lakers, again, it's just AD and LeBron. So if you slow LeBron and slow his process or his ability, and I'm saying slow because it's LeBron James, you're never going to stop him.
You're not going to stop it.
But you focus in on taking away the others, and I would dare Anthony Davis to score 40 a night. Let me see you do it, AD. Let me see you do it. That's what I'm saying. Make LeBron work, because we know he wants to play at his own pace, walk the ball up the floor, do all that stuff. No. We're going to pressure you. We're going to make you play defense. We're going to make you play hard. And we're going to throw Iggy at you. We're going to throw Jimmy at you. We're going to throw Bam at you. We're going to throw a zone at you. We're going to throw all these different defenses at you. But also, here's the key, Webby. Spo coached LeBron in maybe one of his biggest playoff fumbles in his career.
Yeah.
That first year when they against Dallas, when it was a defensive game plan drawn up by your boy Dwayne Casey, by the way.
Yeah.
But it was piggybacking off something Pop did so well, even in the later series where the Heat won the championship. It was turning LeBron into a jump shooter. And if you're going to hit all those jump shots and you're not going to get in the lane and pass and do all that stuff, get all the way downhill to the basket, we don't want that. We're going to make you a jump shooter. And if you hit all your jumpers, cool. We deserve to lose. I'm so, Spo and them are sitting in the lab right now. And that's really the main reason why I'm confident in taking the Heat in this series, is because Spo, I know they got the game plan. I know they got the offensive game plan already. They got the defensive game plan. And them boys are hungry. They're not happy to be there. I think the Nuggets had some happy to be there type vibes. The Heat, nah. We're here. We're trying to win. Notice they said no confetti. We don't want none of that confetti. What is this? No confetti dropping in the damn bubble? Nah, miss me with that.
My only thing is that that's fine and good. Yes, turn LeBron into a jump shooter. That's how you stop him. Absolutely. We've seen that in the past. But that you're assuming then that LeBron isn't also evolving or hasn't evolved from that.
That's fair.
And we've seen him in finals before turn into what looks like the best power forward in the league. Using his body, getting down into the paint, busting up a zone like that, getting right into the middle of it, and getting to the line. And something that, honestly, as he's gotten older, he's been able to figure that out. Remember when he was young and everybody was saying, oh, he needs to go to Hakeem's post school and he's never really going to reach the next level until he learns how to use his post game?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we've seen him use it before. And that's what the brilliance of LeBron is that he can beat you by being Magic Johnson. He can beat you by being Karl Malone. He can beat you in so many different ways that, sure, Pat Riley and Spo are on one side, sipping their scotches out of crystal glasses, diagramming up how to beat LeBron. But, LeBron is also in the lab.
For sure.
Okay?
Totally.
Mixing the beakers together, just looking at a picture of Anthony Davis and staring at it, looking at a picture of Alex Caruso and staring at it, and then writing numbers on a big whiteboard. He's also doing his homework as well. And so it's going to be an awesome kind of you've got one of the best basketball coaching minds in Spo, a guy who's been in the film room literally since he began his basketball career, and you have the smartest basketball mind for a player, I think, that's ever been around. And to see those two, we talk about chess matches with Spo and Brad Stevens, Brad Stevens with Nick Nurse. Let's do the Heat culture and LeBron James, that chess match. And honestly, literally the only reason that I'm taking the Heat, because I love the Heat. I love the team. I love Harrow. I love Jimmy. I'm willing to spend $20 of cash money to get a big face coffee anytime. I'm ready. But I picked LeBron and the Lakers to win at the beginning of the year. I picked them at the beginning of the bubble. I picked them when the playoffs started, and dadgummit, I'm picking LeBron and the Lakers to win the NBA Finals again.
Hey man, and you know what? I'm piggybacking off what you just said, because this is how great of an NBA Finals this is about to be, because I like LeBron. I'm not going to be mad at LeBron if he wins another championship. I think why I'm so hyped is because I think this will be a much better series than most people think, just because they're just saying, oh, well, AD and LeBron, like, how are they going to stop that? And it's going to be fun to see if LeBron and AD are committed to the bully ball. Me and you have talked about this from the start of the year, right? If those two guys commit to bully ball, they force it into a math series. And the math, it just means the Heat would have to shoot a greater number of threes, right? They'd have to shoot at a high clip to win.
And they're not a great three-point shooting team.
They're pretty good. I mean, they're pretty good.
Hero's really good.
Duncan Robinson's really good.
Jimmy doesn't really shoot the three.
But with Dragic,
Bam's not a three-point shooter.
With Dragic playing well, you're talking Dragic, you're talking Hero, you're talking Duncan Robinson, and you're talking Crowder, who shoots better than you think from three.
Better
than you think from three.
He shot great in the Bucks series, but he's not a
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying he shot better than you think from three. That's all I'm saying. Like, I'm looking it up right now. What would you say? What would you think Jay Crowder shoots from three?
Are we talking percentage-wise? Career? We're talking about in this playoffs, in the bubble?
In these playoffs, right now in the bubble.
In these playoffs. 32%.
34.4%.
Close.
You're close. But like Hero, who we think is he's at 37, almost 38, right? Duncan Robinson's at 40. The point is, I just think this series will be a lot closer than we think. They got the goons that are not afraid of LeBron. If there's one thing that we can guarantee, we know those dudes are not afraid of LeBron. Yeah. They have multiple
Jimmy
bodies.
Butler's not afraid of anybody.
Iggy's going to get a lot of minutes just to be in LeBron's grill. Like, he literally doesn't have to do anything other than just be in LeBron's grill the whole time. And that's going to be a huge factor in this series. The others are going to have to step up for the Lakers, and I don't know if they can. But I do know that the guys on the Heat can. So it's going to be just a coaching duel, which I give the advantage to Spo. And overall, Webby, I got Heat in 6, but it's because I just think this is in 6. I just think it's going to be a great, great series. And the chess pieces are going to be moving all over the place. And it comes down to, can old man LeBron, who's proven that he can do it so far, can he continue to do it? And can AD do it, going 35 a night, each and every night, against the defense that we know will be drawn up trying to stop them? Like, Mike Malone is a good, solid coach, but he's not Spo. Mike D'Antoni definitely is not Spo, right? and Portland, as we mentioned, Terry Stotts, we mentioned Portland ran out of gas. We knew Portland. Yeah. I know I was on the Portland train. I thought they would give them a go, and they didn't. But here we are, and I'm on the Heat, man. It'll be a fun series. Oh, above all, I think with all the craziness, with all the uncertainty of getting this season underway, the fact that we've gotten to a Lakers-Heat final, this is great. I'm happy it's because I think the Heat have a better chance than the Celtics would have. Because I think as we've seen, the Celtics aren't ready. They're not ready to take down LeBron.
Right. The other thing that we're not talking about though is that the rest factor for LeBron and only having to play 5 games in each series.
Yes, that's huge.
Nobody pushed him past that.
It's huge.
So another thing, he's got a little more rest than he usually has.
And he needs it. right? Like the reality is he needs it. And that's why I'm going to be so focused on picking him up full court. If he's bringing the ball up, I'm going to be guarding him hard. Like they're going to need Rondo to play better. They're going to need Caruso. Yeah. They're going to need Kuzma. It's going to be an interesting series. And I can't wait to see it tip off. It's going to be so much fun. But yeah, finals picks. As Webby said, he's got the Lakers in 6. And I have the Heat in 6. So we'll be here. We'll see. Someone who might have time to also make a prediction because he's no longer a head coach. And we got to mention this before, we end the basketball talk. Woj dropping a huge Woj bomb that Doc Rivers and Steve Ballmer and the Celtics and the Clippers have decided to end their relationship. Part ways. Yes. It was just Doc Rivers out as Clippers coach. They've mutually agreed to let Doc Rivers step down as coach. I think that's how it was worded. We talked about this after the Clippers lost that series. And we both brought it up. So this is in hindsight. Is it time to look at Doc Rivers? And clearly Ballmer thought it was, but why do you think this move happened now?
See, the thing that when I saw the news, what initially reached out to me, like struck my mind was, I wonder if this was more of a, he was told to leave, or if he went to Ballmer and said, you know what, I'm good, Maybe I don't want to deal with all the leaks coming out with this team in terms of this is what the locker room was like during the playoffs. I don't know if I really want to deal with these 2 superstars and all these big, powerful personalities on this team. Maybe he was just like, maybe I can try my skills with another team. So to me, it was not something that was like a big referendum on Doc's coaching style. I think it might have been more of a, he was ready for the next chapter.
It's interesting, right? Because there's a lot of ways you could go with this. And the way that everything played out, do I think that it's a surprise or a coincidence, rather? Do I think it's a coincidence that Doc gets fired right after the Lakers make it to the finals and beat the team very easily 4-1 that the Clippers blew a lead to? And if I'm Steve Ballmer and I'm sitting there watching this, I'm like, wait, no, this is unacceptable. Something has to happen. So there's a lot of different ways you could look at this, because there was obviously Clippers turmoil, which we discussed in last week's pod, right? As they exited the bubble. A lot of whispers coming out about Paul George and all that. That leads me to think that, hey, is there a world where they could already be talking about, do we need to make roster moves? And maybe Doc wasn't on board with the roster moves that were going to be made. That could be a thing. It could be a thing to where they're worried about Ty Lue leaving, right? And if Ty Lue is going to go get another job and they want to keep Ty Lue, maybe that's a thing. Like, there's so many different angles to this that many moving parts. But I think from a basketball perspective, this is the right move, because if I'm Ballmer,
they need a fresh start, fresh face, whatever it is.
Here's the thing. It was unacceptable, the defensive play calls that they had against Luka. They had no answer for Luka, which I'm not saying that they should like neutralize Luka or stop Luka, but it was embarrassing.
Have a plan.
Well, it was embarrassing to see Bobby Shmurda out there trying to guard Luka on an island with the game on the line. And it's like, that makes no sense. Like, you have all these defensive weapons and your choice was to have Reggie Jackson come out and try to guard Luka with the game on the line. Like, there's too many things that were unacceptable if you're Doc Rivers, and blowing that many 3-1 leads, including, just the fact that you watch the Nuggets then falter against the Lakers in the same situation, but you blew how many 20-point leads against them? All those things add up, and it's too much on the hands of Doc Rivers, because the roster's there. And if you're Ballmer and you're not the basketball guy, but you got to remember, Doc was the one that convinced Ballmer to go all in and make all those picks, trade all those picks to get Paul George and Kawhi. So then when it doesn't work, and not only did it not work, but it failed miserably embarrassingly, Doc's got to eat that. Who's next? Like, who do you think is, or should they bring in? Rumored was
it's going to be Ty Lue.
The rumors were Ty Lue or Jeff Van Gundy.
JVG. Well, listen, I'm sure that Ballmer would like the splashier of the two, the bigger name. But I think that the basketball people around the team will make a huge push for Lue.
Yeah, and bottom line, much like when we talked about KD and the Nets, it's
who the players
You're
want.
going to Kawhi and being like, hey, Kawhi, who do you want?
Yeah.
Or maybe even you're going to Paul George, and Paul George might have thought, hey, this was kind of weird, me coaching his ex's dad.
Yeah.
Which
that story's crazy.
It's a wormhole, people. I'll just say get your Googles up if you want to search Doc Rivers' daughter, Paul George. It's a very interesting internet search. We'll just say that and let you all go off because we've already almost hit an hour. We could be here between that and the whole triangle between Tyler Hero and Kuzma and and Homegirl being in the bubble. Lots of
is she there?
I
didn't realize she was
she's there. Anyway, yeah, there's a lot going on. But I just think, you got to automatically go to the players. And if you're Ballmer, you're listening to Paul George and Kawhi, right? Yeah. And if Paul George and Kawhi have someone else in mind, if they didn't like how Doc handled certain things, and hey, maybe Doc also thought, hey, I don't like all these other people having a say. Maybe I'll just step away. Who knows? But either way, that era is over. Do you want Doc in Philly?
I don't know if I necessarily want Doc in Philly, but it makes the most sense of any other coaching candidate that I've heard. A guy who has a long track record of working with big personalities and big stars. It would make sense with having Simmons and Embiid and trying to get them together, do a little Ubuntu like he did in Boston, try and get everybody on the same page. We'll see. But if it were me, I'd still try to see what I could get for Simmons and build around shooters and Embiid. But that's just me. I'm sure that that's where this ownership is really looking towards, is to bring in Doc Rivers. Yeah. And if they do, we'll see how it goes.
I mean, it's going to be a crazy offseason. And the NBA Finals is going to be great.
There's going to be so much. Yeah, there's still so much that is going to happen. And it's so funny, like a lot of these teams have already, made the coaching hire, like Billy Donovan's already been hired in Chicago. Yeah. Like when there's still so much, there's a draft and a whole bunch of free agent stuff to come down the pipe, which is like, when is the draft?
I don't even know. Sometime in October. I don't even know.
In October.
To be honest, I don't even know. I'm good. Offhand, I couldn't even tell you. I'm going to Google it right now as we're talking. But the crazy part is, you think about the draft, you think about free agency, and just when the next season starts. Oh, I was wrong. Wednesday, November 18th is the NBA draft.
Okay, so it's still a little further away.
Still a ways away. But so it's going to be interesting, this whole offseason with the coaching carousel, how that's going to play out, how teams are going to react to what just happened to the bubble. Are teams going to overreact to what happened to the bubble, or are they going to come back and say, hey, well, this was just a crazy experience, and we're going to come back with our squad under quote-unquote, I guess, non-bubble circumstances and see how it plays out. Either way, though, Doc Rivers, end of the day, should have won more with the Blake and CP3 era Clippers. You should have won more with this Kawhi and Paul George era Clippers. And I still say you should have won more with the Celtics. And, the Celtics, that Celtics Paul Pierce team, we think of as if they were some dynasty or something, and they won one championship.
Yeah, they were good.
They were good. They
got to two finals
and a
couple more conference finals, way more than the Clippers did.
But let me ask you something. Who do we think of as a better dynasty run, that Celtics team or from a similar era, the Pistons team?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. The Pistons won one championship as well, but they made another NBA Finals, and they were in the conference finals 4 or 5 straight years. The Celtics team was only in the conference finals, I want to say the 3 years. Let me look that up. But the point I'm making is that it's 2 finals, right? 2 finals, and they lost. Yeah, they did make
2009. They weren't there because it was Cleveland and the Magic.
And that's when they lost, right? So
KG was hurt.
KG got hurt, yeah. So they won in the finals, lost in the conference semis, then lost in the finals, lost in the conference semis, lost in the conference finals. So they only made, 1, 2, 3 conference finals. If you go back to that Pistons team, and the only point I'm making is, we don't think of the Pistons as being like these great winners or with as much pub as we do that Boston Celtics era team. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But basketball. Great to talk to you about that as always. But the regulars here on the Ball on Blast podcast know we like to wrap things up with something a little different, something non-basketball. We call it Ask on Blast. And last week I'd asked you if you'd seen the Netflix doc called The Social Dilemma. And
I had some homework. I had not seen it.
I mean, hey, some fun homework, but at the same time, I know you're busy over there, Webby, with young Ivy, and so I don't try to throw too much your way. Don't try to throw too much your way.
My wife and I did get to watch a movie together for the first time in 6 weeks since Ivy was born, and so we sat down and watched The Social Dilemma. Yeah. Very, very interesting.
Yes.
And not just the subject matter, but really the way the doc was put together by having the talking heads, giving interviews. And they got some really crazy access with some guys who had some really high-level jobs with companies like Twitter and Google and Facebook and Pinterest and all these social media giants that we know. But then also having those like the dramatizations in there of the family, and then of my boy Pete Campbell from Mad Men as the 3-headed monster in your social media, the advertising guy, the engagement guy, and I forget what the other guy was, but just to kind of give you, it seemed to me like, remember what was that movie about the financial crash, The Big Short?
Big Short, yes.
How The Big Short had those little interludes of Margot Robbie in the bathtub explaining what was happening with the financial crisis. So I kind of like that. I thought it was pretty unique in terms of a documentary. You don't really see that a lot. But the subject matter was crazy.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, the film basically explores the rise of social media and the damage it's caused to society. And it's focusing on basically the exploitation of its users for financial gain through what is termed as surveillance capitalism and data mining. And basically how all these things, whether it's Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they've all been built to capitalize on our addiction, right? And then the use of how they use that and how it's been used for politics and how it affects people's mental health. It was...
the crazy line was that it was just one of the quotes that came up, and it was like there's only 2 businesses that refer to their customers as users: social media and drugs.
Insane.
Crazy.
Right? Insane. And it was one of those things where I made sure to tell a lot of people that I know to watch it, just because I feel like it's an important watch for everybody in this generation, because we're also consumed by social media, right? We all use it. And one thing I always say all the time, and I think it gets misconstrued, but I always try to tell people, just in conversation with friends, it's using social media isn't bad. How we use it is bad. We can choose to use it for good, and we can choose to use it to be productive, or we can choose to use it to just scroll for whatever on Instagram, right? I was trying to keep the conversation serious instead of saying scroll for ass, because I know I'd get sidetracked. But the point remains, right? So to me, this is what the focus of the movie was, and it was such a good breakdown in terms of, hey, these things are meant to get us addicted to them. So when we pick up our phone, that's such a bad thing that happens. And we don't even understand how much of a problem that is. Then when you get into the level of, okay, well, what are people actually watching and taking in as news? Like how many times just in conversations with your friends or family or whoever, they bring up a story and oh, did you see this guy did this? And it's like, oh, where'd you see that? Oh, I saw it online. Okay, but what was the source? It's like, I don't know. I just saw it online. And it's like, that's where our society is going. And it was scary, right? Like it was, when you watch it and you're taking it in, and if you're really understanding what they're trying to tell us, that like, it's going to keep going because it's all based off of making more and more money. So they're incentivized to keep doing this. That part is scary when you get into the misinformation in politics. And I mean, hell, this coronavirus pandemic that's still going on. It's just, it was nerve-wracking. And I feel like I brought it up so that everyone would watch it, because I think it's a must watch.
For sure. Now you brought up the point there that it's so like the money involved in it. And so this is what I was kind of saying to my wife as well. It's like at the end of the documentary, they're like, oh, so how do we fix this? And it's like, there's no fixing this.
You can't.
Like the money is already so ingrained in this that you're not going to be able to break it, because too many people are making money off of it. And now it's getting to be like politics. And we're seeing this as well especially in the States with, the Democrats, Republicans, it doesn't matter. They're all in it for the same thing, which is to keep in power, to keep making money. And anytime somebody introduces a way to break that cycle, they're going to get pushed down, no matter whether they're on the right or the left, because there's too many people making too much money. And they're going to do everything in their power to keep it that way, and to keep people who aren't making the money from making that money. And it's the same with social media. It's the same with politics. It's the same with capitalism. It's the same with pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Is that the money is now too ingrained in it, and change is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what's going to happen, what it's going to take for change, a disaster or something. Like I was talking about climate change, but it's really depressing. And all you can do is be so mindful about it and keep what you're doing, for you, right?
Well, I think my big two takeaways from it was, one, that the only way it's going to change, the government has to come in on some level and try to interject and, take out these things that are clearly harmful. I think at one point they talked about, the reason why there are regulations on alcohol and cigarettes. It's because eventually the government comes in and says, hey, yes, you can have this, but we need to put regulations on it in some form because it's for the betterment of society, right? And so we don't think of Facebook and YouTube and all these things in that way until it's going to be too late, right? Because it's going to be like, well, what's the big deal? And they have different examples, whether it's Pizzagate, and I love to see a redux of it, like when this coronavirus pandemic is over, just like a deep dive into like how the news of this, and I'm doing news with air quotes, really spread around in misinformation. Because, the other part, they did a really good job of bringing in like the people who were in charge of designing Google, right? And the search feeds and who made up the like button. And, it was interesting to hear the guy say, when we developed the like button, we thought we were doing this for like the betterment of society. This was going to make people feel good. Like we didn't understand, just the trickle down effect of it all. And you genuinely believe them, right? Like you're watching them and you're taking it in, but then you see the flip side of that. And there are people who are like, oh no, like I knew what we were doing when we made it. And even to this day, like I didn't use Google. Who was a guy that made up the Google, but then he's like, I use Firefox to search because he knows. And I was just like, yo, what the fuck? Like it's such a great watch. And so, my big takeaway was that. And just for us, not to be the panic, like, oh no, we're screwed, we're fucked. Even though there's part of me that thinks that, the biggest takeaway is I think we all need to gain a better understanding of what social media is. And then once we do that, then focus in on how we use it and what we get from it. And what happens a lot is, I say this so much at work, because obviously I work in the media industry. Like it's a metric. It's not the metric. It's not a be all and end all metric, but it's a metric. You can manipulate the numbers, and if you're out here just trying to get Google likes or Instagram likes or follows, you can do that, right? You can do that. But at the end of the day, it's just a metric, and there's ways to fake it, right? So that was basically my key takeaway from that, and I'd encourage everyone to watch it. Send us your thoughts on it, what you thought about it, and because I thought it was really good. I interrupted you at one point, though. Sorry.
Just to be mindful, like the thing is like, you know, scrolling through Instagram or anything or liking something on Twitter doesn't make you a bad person or make you part of the problem. But just to stay mindful and realize, like you say, what social media actually is and what is actually going on in like the background and what's behind it. That's having that knowledge is just so powerful.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. Because people, you know, in our society, and I know this sounds weird because we're literally doing a podcast right now that will live on YouTube that I will share.
Please like and share.
Right? That I will share. No, exactly. That I will share on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and be like, hey, like and share this podcast and blah, blah, blah. And I trust me, I'm not mad at social media. I just encourage people to understand what social media is. And a lot of times, you know, people will come and say things like, oh, well, how many likes or how many people watch? And it's like, listen, that's just a metric. If I wanted to show you that I have 10,000 followers, I could buy 10,000 followers, right? Exactly. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about the actual connections that you are able to make and then making those connections real. Right? Like, it's not about, oh, I got 10 million likes on this. Like, that's an algorithm. You can cheat those things. So I don't know. It was super interesting to me to see and understand. And there's another conversation I'll have with you off the air that's super interesting about that I can't have publicly. But but it's like, to me, I just found it super interesting. It was super interesting. And as people who live on social media, like, I'm on social media a lot. And so I always have this like dueling battle when I'm trying to explain Twitter or Instagram to someone. You know what I mean? Like, oh, why are you on it or why are you not on it? And I always just say, I'm like, you got to understand why you're on it. And I think I mentioned this on a pod, maybe one of them we were doing called, during the pandemic, right? When we were just talking about reviews and stuff. I think I told you this, or maybe I didn't, but either way, there was a moment in the middle of the pandemic where I remember I was scrolling on Instagram and I put my phone down and then I picked my phone back up like maybe 5 minutes later and just went back to scrolling, and I caught myself and I was like, what am I doing? Like, and then in that moment, like, because you're scrolling whatever foolishness is on your feed. And in that moment, you know what I did? I went and I just followed like entrepreneurial site and then like a business development site. And then this is like positive thoughts. And I just started following like just a couple other random, just like productive things, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Because, and you just realize the tricks that get played in your mind. And I don't know, man, it's just such an interesting deep dive. I'm sorry I'm rambling, but I thought it was just such a good doc and an important doc for a lot of people to watch.
Definitely everybody should watch it, for sure. Everybody under the age of 50 or 60, right? Because I think
anyone that has a social media account, right? Like, I want to make my mom watch it just because, like, you have Facebook, but then you see all this information on Facebook all the time. And then, you know, it'll be like, oh, hey, did you see this? And it's like, yeah, but that's like a fake video, or that's a fake site, or that's a fake whatever. And it's just, people got to understand, hey, once you watch one of these conspiracy theory videos online, they just purposely keep sending you more and more and more and more and more. And it's so important to understand that angle, especially in the current times we are now with an election going on in the States and this coronavirus pandemic. Information is key. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry, rant over. Sorry to the basketball fans that might have just been like, what just happened here? What am I listening to? What podcast is this right now? Oh, man. Sorry. I apologize, people. I apologize. But super great doc.
It's all good.
Super great doc. And hey, that's the beauty of this podcast, right? We bring you in with basketball, and then we bring you into other things that are our likes and our interests and things that, you know, just caught our attention over the past week. So much fun as always. deep diving into the NBA and the NBA Finals, Mr. Andrew Webster, and that's what my timeline is going to be filled with for the next week and a half. I can only imagine yours is the same, but if people want to hit you up and get your takes, where can they find you, Mr. Andrew Webster?
Watch along with me and give me parenting advice on Twitter and Instagram. Come and give me all those likes and retweets and make my engagement fire so my Pete from Mad Men and my phone can be happy. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter, both the same, at awebster84.
Yes, and you know, my Twitter is at Shell Alexander. My Instagram is at Sheldon Alexander. And I hope we understand kind of the point that we were making here. You know, it's like social media isn't all bad. Social media is as bad as you make it. If you want to follow all good things and positive things, you can do that. If you're tired of seeing negativity on social media, you can unfollow it, right? You don't have to live in this chamber where you follow things you don't like or follow people you don't like or hearing their opinions. You can avoid that if you choose to. That's just a reminder. But hopefully you like following me at Sheldon Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander and liking and subscribing to the Ball on Blast podcast, which is part of the On Blast Podcast Network. And also on the network, we still got our NFL pod is up and running and doing pretty well. Tough week last week. I think I went 7-9 against the spread last week, week 3. But I was nervous heading in. I gave the warning. I was nervous about it going in.
The week 3 is always tough.
It's a tough one, but still above 500 for the week or for the year. Pardon me. Record's still good. So we got that podcast up and running. That is also under the On Blast Podcast Network. That one's still called I'll Name This Football Pod Later. So yeah, tune into that for sure. Follow us, like us, subscribe, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube. Hit us with the like, hit us with the subscribe if you like the positivity that we try to give to you each and every week. For my guy Andrew Webster, my name of course is Sheldon Alexander, and as I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is the Ball on Blast podcast, as always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.
Peace.
This is Ball on Blast, part of the On Blast Podcast Network, available on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. If you like it, then subscribe and tell your friends. Holla.